Okay, hello, and welcome to another episode of Tech and Learning Conversations. I'm your host, Kevin Hogan, and today we're going to dive into one of the hottest topics that I think we'll hear about in education right now. Every year there's always kind of a catchphrase that you see popping up, and for an old journalist like me, 3 times equals a trend, and that phrase is engagement. Since COVID turned our classrooms upside down, we've been grappling with students who seem wired differently. They're more distracted, they're harder to reach. Even if you have their devices tucked into their backpacks or into their lockers, they still just don't seem to be with it. So here's the thing. Everyone agrees that engagement matters. The question is, how do we even agree on what engagement actually looks like? So in this episode, I'm talking with Brian Shaw. He's the CEO of Discovery Education, and they just released their 2nd annual research report. And this year, it's all about, guess what? Engagement. And the findings in there are pretty eye-opening. We're talking about some really serious disconnects between what administrators think is happening in classrooms and what teachers are actually experiencing. We're also, we get into the great AI debate, why superintendents love it and why some teachers are still skeptical. So whether you're a teacher in the trenches, an administrator looking at district-wide data, or even a parent trying to figure out if your kid is actually learning or just going through the motions, I think this conversation has something for you. So let's get into it. Okay, Brian, great to see you, although I'd rather see you in person like we saw each other last summer in Texas at ISTE. It's nice to see you via Zoom, our new portal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see you, Kevin.
And as always, I know we were saying before we started recording, it's an interesting year to be in ed tech, which makes my job easy and your job hard, I'm sure. But let's say challenging, right? That's the proper phraseology.
That's a good way to put it.
But as always, Discovery doing lots of stuff. Maybe we'll just dig right in and talk about the latest numbers that you guys have released.
Yeah, so recently just released a major research report. It's actually the 2nd year in a row that we've done that. Really thinking about how to elevate timely and relevant conversations that really require a bit more exploration. And this year, the theme is all around engagement. Our team is out meeting with education stakeholders at all levels each and every day, and the theme of engagement comes up pretty much constantly. So, look, we want to take a deeper dive, gain a greater understanding of the subject, and really kind of probe into how engagement's defined, it's observed, how it's nurtured in classrooms, and see what we, Discovery Education, but also we as a broader industry, should do to continue to improve.
Yeah, it's funny. I have noticed that I think that might be the catchphrase for 2026, this idea of engagement and like just this kind of theme. And I think this probably stemmed from that great, terrible experiment that schools had to do during COVID in terms of that remote learning at first. And then you come back and this realization that you have students, you have young people who are wired differently, right? I mean, and they're probably wired differently because of that experience. And that as much of it was an issue before COVID, it seems to be even more prevalent now. And you guys have a lot of data in here. And, we don't have, I'm not Joe Rogan here. We only get about 10 or 15 minutes, but there are a couple of things that I saw, in the report. And the first thing is like getting to a common denominator or a common understanding of what engagement actually means, right? Some of the data seems like the administrators, students, teachers are all kind of touching different parts of the elephant.
Yeah, and it's maybe starting with the good news in the report. The one consistent thing that I saw in all of the data across all of the different stakeholder groups is that there's alignment that engagement's important. So if you'll recall in the report, it was 90% plus of educators, superintendents, principals, all of the key groups thinking that engagement's one of the top predictors of success at school. So the good news is everyone agrees this is important.
Yeah.
But to your point, as soon as you get one click down below that, that's where the interesting things happen. And one of the things that report really surfaced to answer your question, the even just what are the top indicators of engagement? There's disagreement. A teacher would say asking thoughtful questions. An administrator would say, how did they perform on an assessment?
Right.
And meanwhile, the teachers say the assessments are actually probably among the lower indicators of engagement. So there is definitely a gap in terms of just defining, let alone measuring. I mean, just even defining what engagement is. And to me, I think an interesting finding here, just to kind of build off of that, is administrators and teachers don't even necessarily agree on whether they have the right measuring tools or protocols within a school to measure engagement. Overwhelming majorities of superintendents and principals say, yes, we have it. We have the right, intentional approach to measuring engagement. Teachers, it's about 50-50. And I think that shows a pretty big kind of disconnect from the senior leaders trying to think through strategy and how they approach providing the right tools and curriculum to the classroom, and then the teachers that are with the students each and every day. It's a couple of very interesting gaps that we identified that I think are worth kind of drilling in and exploring further.
Yeah, and it seems to me that that's kind of a classic conundrum, though, too, right? I mean, you have an administrator, you have a superintendent who needs to look across a swath of 60,000 students and say in a super large district, say like Houston or something. And then you have like the fifth grade chemistry teacher who has 35 kids in that class, and the numbers, the data that you can pull out of things in order to engage those students are the tools need to be different, but need to satisfy at the same time the ultimate thing, which is the learning, right? So as a developer of software, what are your intentions? What are your goals in terms of satisfying both of those customer bases, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts, and the report does a good job really kind of elevating this. I mean, student engagement is variable, so it's hard to define, it's hard to measure. So as we thought about, first of all, this report, the hope is that it sparks conversation. So getting the different constituents to talk and have open conversations is the first step in a direction of having a little bit more alignment, perhaps, maybe a bit more industry kind of alignment in terms of definition and measurement. But the easy thing, once you've aligned on the definition and the key metrics, is the actual reporting and presenting of the results. It's getting everyone on the same page first that I think is really hard.
Yeah. And we've gone, I think, at least 5 minutes now without mentioning AI, which it might be a new record for my interviews so far this year. But it obviously plays a huge role in whatever's going to be developed. When it comes to having that solution of maybe that individualized learning, another catchphrase, right, from our world. But it seems that teachers are less enthusiastic about it compared to superintendents. Pretty much every superintendent is like, yes, we need this, we're going to use it, and hope we can use it for the right way. And teachers it's kind of following historic trends of, I know teachers are always being resistant of data and the use of data. They don't see themselves as scientists or analysts. They almost see themselves as artists, right? And knowing Johnny and Sarah, and so like, I don't need AI in order to teach calculus because I've taught calculus to kids for 30 years or even 10 years. What do you think when it comes to that proximity to learning effect? And like, how do you see discovery helping teachers see AI as an ally, rather than a threat?
Yeah, and I think it's really important because AI, the technologies for the sake of AI, is not the solution. And it's certainly, I think, a large reason why there's some resistance. But if it's purposeful and it's intentionally woven in as a support for the teacher, so think about the things AI can actually do that are meaningful for a teacher. It can certainly save teachers time. I mean, we've seen that with things like our assessment generator. I know plenty of other players in the space have really cool AI technologies. So saving that time, it's the nights and weekends, but it's also the in the classroom time that can be spent with the kids, providing more personalized attention, makes a huge difference. Second, I mean, scaling what we know to be best practice, I think, is certainly a thing that we're always focused on when we're thinking about how we leverage technology. And so if you're thinking about it in that way, as a bit of a kind of a unique chance to expand the bandwidth of a teacher to do what they do best, that art part that you talked about. I think it's fantastic, and I think it has the potential to really kind of transform the classroom. But it's not just we're going to deploy a bunch of technology and suddenly the teacher's no longer talking to the student and engaging in the right instructional craft that they're so good at. Like that can't be the solution. It's your example of the calculus teacher is a great one. It's how do you have that teacher, lesson prep is faster, assessment generation is faster, grading papers is faster, so they can actually spend some one-on-one time with the kids, or break into small groups in a different kind of differentiated way. So that in my mind is where AI is most powerful. Is look, it can save time, it can provide data and insights, but it needs to be in support of what teachers do best.
Yeah, and hopefully one of the things I've noticed since the AI hype cycle, where now it's becoming embedded into technologies and softwares to the point where it's almost invisible, right? I mean, teachers don't care about spell check anymore, right? I hope they don't. And it's kind of the same way, right? I mean, maybe these tools will just become second nature.
Yeah, that's our hope, is that, I mean, a lot of things, so whether it's AI tools or it is how you think about engagement using different technologies in the classroom, it doesn't necessarily have to be a new discrete product. The more seamlessly it can be woven into the things that teachers are using each and every day, and I mean, the more invisible it is in many regards, the better from our perspective.
Yeah. Another interesting aspect of the report, and again, I think this might be a post-COVID thing, is the perspective of parents. For all my years of reporting before COVID, I don't think we mentioned parents like more than 3 times. And then all of a sudden, they became teaching assistants, right? And all of a sudden, thanks to Zoom and thanks to other remote meeting times, like, oh, wow, parents have become more involved. And so it seems like you included that in your survey. Yeah. So what insights did they share about engagement that might even differ from like the educator viewpoint or the student viewpoint?
Yeah, and that was very intentional that we wanted to include the parents and the students here, because I think there are multiple levels of alignment or lack of alignment that are worth highlighting. And yeah, I mean, the parents obviously have a unique and highly vested interest in their kid and their kid's success. It's interesting. Like, you end up seeing in the results that there is alignment on things like, is engagement important? Definite alignment. Alignment on, do teachers have enough tools to really drive engagement? The answer was no across most of the constituents, including parents. But what was interesting is students and parents had a different view on whether their child was engaged versus how teachers and administrators may have had. And I forget the exact stats off the top of my head, but it was north of 60% of students thought they were engaged, and it was about 20% less of their teachers thought the same kid was engaged.
Yeah.
And part of that goes into the complexity of engagement. It is not one size fits all. There are multiple dimensions. I mean, I think about my own kids. They show engagement and learning very, very differently.
Yeah.
And the parent voice is necessary. I hope the parent voice is actually part of the conversation in defining and aligning and ultimately measuring engagement at a district level.
Yeah.
Because you're right, they have a different perspective and a different level of involvement now than they did 5 years ago.
Yeah, and an important voice. Well, but both of us being parents, we kind of want to have some say in what's happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, and again, you guys have a lot of numbers in here, a lot of data, and we could go on for a while. But I think I'm just touching on the highlights, and I encourage everyone to go and download the report. Because I think there's a lot of good, insightful analysis there. But to finish up, why don't you talk a little bit about, and thank you to Discovery for doing the due diligence here and putting this out and not hiding it behind your kimono and actually sharing it with the world, which is a great thing. But maybe you can talk a little bit about how you plan to translate these findings into improvements for your particular products and services.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So Discovery Education has always been about engagement. It's kind of core to our identity and runs through our products. As I think about like how people perceive our company and our products, my hope is that they immediately think of engaging content that brings in real world into the classroom, that leverages multiple different technologies to kind of spark curiosity and drive achievement for kids. I hope none of that changes. So in some regards, it's not a pivot. It's more of a validation and a push to accelerate how we think about engagement. So we're always researching, whether it's our user experience or our product research, kind of looking at indicators of engagement. Sure, from an efficacy perspective, whether the products are actually working, that's super important these days to really drive evidence of academic achievement. But what it's doing for us, though, recognizing that everyone agrees engagement's important, most people agree there aren't enough tools in the hands of teachers, is how do we continue to evolve our products to have more of that, as we talked about earlier, embedded seamlessly into our product. So it's not a new engagement product, but it is, as an example, one of my favorite enhancements that we've been really kind of adding onto at scale over the last couple of years is immersive learning within our products. When we think about engagement, it's not just, again, it's not a separate technology, it's not a separate app, a separate product that needs to kind of somehow be forced into the instructional flow. This is, in the course of a lesson, you have instructionally relevant, standards aligned experiences that can really bring a topic to life. And so I think about augmented reality and the ability with, at this point, one of the good things that the pandemic did, most kids have either a Chromebook or an iPad. That's enough technology. You don't necessarily, the world will go towards the direction of having virtual reality, immersive experiences that could be really powerful for education, but you don't need that today. The device you already have in your hand can be the way to see a life-size dinosaur in your room, or walk through the pyramids in Egypt. And when we talk about engagement, we talk about how it impacts learning. Discovery education, we're going to continue to focus on those types of things that are differentiated, that every kid is going to go home that day, tell their parents all about all the great things they learned because it was such a unique and differentiated experience. So that's what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to push forward with speed on key initiatives like immersive that I think are really, from an engagement perspective, are really game changers.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks so much for your work, and thanks so much for these particular things that gives me interesting things to talk about. They really, and hopefully will drive our readers and our listeners to work on improving that engagement in their own classrooms and in their schools and districts. And we'll continue to track these trends, and I hope to see you again before the next report comes out next year.
Sounds great, Kevin. Yeah, look forward to continuing the conversation.
And that was Brian Shaw from Discovery Education. Thanks a lot, Brian, for your time and your insights. One thing that really struck me about the conversation is how something as fundamental as student engagement can mean such different things to different people in the same building. Teachers are looking for thoughtful questions. Administrators are checking assessment scores. Students like to think they're engaged, but teachers aren't so sure. And everyone's got a different opinion on whether we even have the right tools to measure any of it. But if you want to look at the tools that Discovery used to get their survey results together, you can download the full engagement report, and I'll have a link there on the page. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with colleagues who are also wrestling with the engagement question, which, let's be honest, is pretty much everyone right now. Next week, I talked to Brooke Martin. She's the executive director of CTE for Aldine ISD in Houston, Texas, and we talk about how data has become essential for managing her district. Thanks again for listening.